of 8 minutes.
And I'd just like to thank the Minister for coming in today, and I do believe you have a very big challenge ahead of you. But before I start, I would also like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Martin McGuinness, who was instrumental, as we all know, in the peace process, and we all know he's worked tirelessly to connect with people to whom he has been diametrically opposed politically, most notably the late Reverend Ian Paisley. We may not see his kind in office again, and I do hope he has a full recovery to his health. But I also want to take the opportunity to wish his successor, Michelle O'Neill, and all of the North's Democratic leaders very well. The forthcoming elections in the North are taking place in an atmosphere of crisis. It does not seem likely that a new power-sharing executive can be easily formed unless there can be a fresh start, renewing the commitments made in 1998 and 2007. While we await the people's verdict in the North, we all know what is occurring, and there is partly the consequence of the referendum held in the UK last June. It's not just about that, of course, Minister. We can all agree that Ash for Cash scandal needs to be sorted, respecting principles of good and clean government. The costs to the people of the North must not be forgotten as they look at the prospects of the drying up of EU funding of agriculture and numerous other important functions, including cross-border and peace programmes, which are areas that I'm specifically interested in, Minister, as I have worked in the community in the North on many different occasions. Ever since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, it has also been obvious that there has been resistance by the DUP to the equality agenda, reluctance to engage in all Ireland bodies, reluctance to treat nationalists as equals within the executive, and sadly, its reluctance to embrace equality goes further, as shown in the party's strong opposition to same-sex marriage. Because the Irish Government is the co-guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement and has equal status with the British Government, Minister, will you be urging the British counterpart to put pressure on the DUP to fulfil all its current and further obligations? Theresa May seems on course for hard Brexit, and all considered opinion suggests that this will have a significant effect on the island of Ireland, because the border between the North and South will only be the only land border between the UK and the EU. And the reimposition of a hard land border will have implications for both trade and security. Britain's departure from the customs union suggests that there may have to be some physical barrier to the transport of goods between both jurisdictions on this island. The fact that the Brexit campaign was strongly focused on the issue of immigration also suggests that the freedom of movement between the EU, 26 counties, and the UK, the 6 counties, may be at risk. Recent submissions to the Parliamentary Northern Ireland Affairs Committee highlight the impact on people's lives that Brexit will have. The head of the Northern Irish arm of Dairy UK has warned of the damage ahead. No longer being part of the EU trade deals will see dairy exports to major markets such as Malaysia and Thailand face at least double tariff rates, which, I quote, would kill that business. On the possibility of hard border with a customs barrier and with migration officials behind it, he stated, "It's major issue for the dairy industry. We are very, very dependent on what we call an all-island value chain. If we have any interruption in the current practices, it is going to affect the longer-term viability of the industry." I would like to ask you, Minister, now that the ideal outcome of a soft Brexit for the whole of the UK seems unlikely, what plans have been put in place to establish a separate strand in the negotiations focusing on the specific concerns which arise for the island? Will you be asking our EU partners to ensure that the Good Friday Agreement is fully protected? And will that request include special status for the North to enable it to stay within the single market and the customs union, and to place the practical border between Ireland and Great Britain in the Irish Sea at ports and airports? That seems the best way to me to keep the borderless island we were promised by the outworkings of the Good Friday Agreement, and which we have enjoyed for over a decade. The status of the North was supposedly enshrined in the Good Friday Agreement through an act of Irish self-determination, North and South, and the modification of Articles 2 and 3 of our Constitution was based on the understanding that a majority in both jurisdictions had to vote in favour of any change in the status of the island. Would you agree, Minister, that a currently envisaged Brexit contravenes these agreements both in word and in spirit? Have you given any consideration to the possibility of the North and Scotland remaining in the EU and also in the UK, reflecting the wishes of their respective peoples? The possibility has been argued by Professor Brendan O'Leary and would seem to be a rational democratic compromise as both areas voted to remain in the EU. The case of Northern Ireland is different to that of Scotland, I know, because of our Good Friday Agreement and the treaty. But, Minister, I think we must have regard to the current and future interests of Scotland, whether or not its Parliament and people choose to stay in the UK. In any case, the position advanced by Professor O'Leary and others emphasises the need for Ireland to have a well thought out and coherent strategy before the negotiations begin. In my view, and it is the view of most of those I meet in my new role, North and South, that defending the Good Friday Agreement and the 1999 British-Irish Treaty should be the firm red lines of the Irish Government, both with the UK, with our EU partners. The Good Friday Agreement and the treaty signed by 2 EU member states assumed a borderless Ireland and created a North-South Ministerial Council tasked with addressing relevant EU matters. I believe it is vital that no physical land border should be reintroduced, no custom posts, no migration officers, no police or military portakabins or watchtowers. And this should be a red line for us, and that Michael Barnier should be so advised. The ideal scenario would be for the North to stay fully in the EU, but failing that to keep the North's existing European status as much as possible, for example within the single market and the customs union. This option, of course, would exclude Northern Ireland from full UK exit, but would do so precisely because of the UK's previous commitments to a borderless Ireland, and it would respect the preferences of the North's voters. I understand that your concerns as Minister, including protecting the economic interests of our citizens and its resident businesses, but these interests have much less traction with Ireland's allies in the rest of the EU, because they are our competitors on these matters. Focusing on the Good Friday Agreement, therefore, makes moral, political and strategic sense. It is simply the best way to deal with all the prospective difficulties, and, as I have said, we should also do our best to protect Scotland's current and future interests. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court in London decided that the Northern Ireland Assembly need not be consulted as a matter of domestic UK law over the UK's government decision to trigger Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union. This unfortunate and controversial decision is at odds with many Irish people's understanding of what was agreed in 1998, namely that all of the institutional relations within the North, between North and South, between East and West, and between these isles and our European partners were one complex unity, and that any constitutional change required the consent of the people of Ireland, North and South. Minister, I am asking you today to please explain to us what you intend to do to ensure that the Good Friday Agreement is protected in its full integrity, and to ensure that the wishes of the majority in the North are upheld, and that the status of all island relations are specifically treated distinctly as a separate strand in the Article 50 negotiations.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Senator